It's time to experiment and create this entire animation inside of After Effects frame by frame. Let's do it.
TipTut.
Part 5, the final touches. During the creation of this series, I realised that this project was much more complex and larger than I had intended. I often found myself backtracking, making mistakes, and exploring new ideas. Usually, I would cut this out of the episode to provide a concise experience, but for several reasons, this wouldn't work for this series. Therefore, rather than scrapping the episodes, I decided to leave in my mistakes, explorations, and thought processes, as I thought it might help provide a unique and helpful experience. With that in mind, let's get to it. Hello everybody and welcome back to TipTut and welcome back to the final episode of animation in After Effects. We're taking a look at experimenting to see if we can do frame by frame animation inside of After Effects, and this is what we've made so far. The last shot we're going to do in this sequence is this final shot here where the ball has finished arcing through the sky and comes down to land in the net. We're going to animate the net like so, and we're going to animate the ball dropping down and stuff like that. So without any further ado, let's just jump right in. I'm going to create a new composition. Call this one Scene 1 Shot 4. It's going to have all the same parameters as we've had this entire project. 1 second just seems a little bit short though for this one. Let's make it 10 seconds. Excuse me, I just had a cup of tea. So let's drag in our animation MP4 and crop the section that we need. If we just bring this over until we get the shot in time, like so. Let's split that layer there, pop that at the start of our frame, and to about there seems to be the consensus. So shift delete that layer, trim the composition down to the work area, and we're working on, it looks like, about a second. Let's give ourselves 2 seconds or even 3, just so we've got a bit of breathing room. But we know that that's the point in which our animation is going to take place. So maybe we give ourselves sort of 4 frames of just the basketball hoop. So let's draw that first then. We're going to need a sky. So I'm just going to grab the sky from our last shot, copy those layers, paste them in here, reverse them like so. And this time again, we'll bring up our position keyframe. Excuse me. Bring up our position keyframes and just have a different cloud. Maybe we'll remove the cloud entirely on this one. Who knows? Let's move our guide layer to the top and change its blend mode to multiply so we can see what we're working with. And let's get cracking drawing this background. I'm going to need my palette for colors. I'm going to alt click my stroke until there's nothing there and start drawing this basketball hoop. Let's use a nice dark purple for the pole here. And on top of that, we'll use the next color up. Oh, excuse me. We'll use the next color up, there we go, for the backboard. And I'm going to be following the sketch, but also making sure that everything's even. So shape 2, we just want to be this darker color or this lighter one. So it would be this darker one, then we can have lighter paint on it. Drag this entire layer below. And if we invert this layer's colors, excuse me, apply invert to that and then change it to screen instead. Because we've got a dark background, this will allow our sketch to be lighter and therefore still visible. Okay, so in the middle of this shape layer, we're going to start drawing the patterns that you can see on this board here. So horizontal line, remove the fill, apply the stroke, which we'll just do in this lighter red here. And then do the same Oops, let's do that like this instead. 45-degree angle by holding shift into a straight line. That's good. We'll take that shape here and copy it. That's shape 2. Copy and paste. Oh God, oops. Move the whole thing. Oh, that's not working very well at all, is it? Let's draw these shape layers instead then on a new layer. So we'll rename this one backboard. Collapse that down. And then on a separate layer in the middle. I suppose what we could do actually is draw one of these, holding shift, coming down like so, on the same layer. Draw half of that line. And then again, where we think the middle is on the same layer, draw half of this guide box. Like so. And then apply a mirror. Oh, I think I just did that on a different layer. Yes, make sure that's on the same layer. Excuse me. Like that. If we just hide this for now so we can see a bit clearer. Double the thickness of that line. Maybe to 20. And then apply a mirror with the reflection axis being the center. Nice quick way to get those lines drawn. Then maybe we can just go to contents, shape 3. Have that be a brighter line. Like so, that looks pretty good. Then we can apply a set matte to this layer and have that be backboard. So it only appears on the contents of the backboard. That looks pretty good. And we'll call it lines. Drag that below our sketch and turn it back on. Now for the net, we're going to need a solid shape that doesn't move and then like an animated path layer underneath that. So what we will do is draw ourselves with the ellipse tool and let's use this lighter color for now. We'll find the middle of our actual pole here and we'll just draw ourselves a loop that looks to be roughly the right size. Increase the stroke width and this again to about 30. And we'll just call this one hoop. Bring it below our sketch. On a separate layer underneath that, we will have a fill layer with the same color for now, or just perhaps one shade darker so we can see. This will be the layer the ball passes in front of and therefore doesn't need to animate. So we'll select that, cross it down, call it net back, pop that below the hoop. Okay, then we'll also make another layer. This will be the one that we're animating. Coming down. Oops, let's make sure that's just a point for now. Like so. And we'll make sure that that follows the front of the hoop. So that when we pop it above the neck but below the hoop and call it neck front, if we were to drop a basketball between those layers, it would appear above that section but below this one. We'll also grab both the net layers and make them the most net color that we have here. And we'll probably change the hoop to be that darker one. Let's hide our guide layer. That looks pretty good. What we're also going to do is get our net layers, take their opacity down to about 90%. And the net back layer maybe a little bit lower than that, so it makes it a touch darker. And that looks pretty good, I think. Okay, so let's see what happens. The ball comes in. Oops, down there, visible. Ball comes in, drops, get caught in the net and slows down, rotates and drops through. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I don't think we need the guide layer for this at all because it's just coming down. So let's just hide that for now. Cool. Let's draw the basketball. That's going to go between these two layers. So what I'm going to do is just make them a very obvious color, like orange, so that at a glance I can see. And I might just actually make the rest of these blue again, so that at a glance it's not very distracting. We'll draw our basketball, making sure it's just smaller than the hoop. And we don't want a stroke on that at all. We want fill. We'll call this B-ball. And we'll pop it between our nets and you'll see. There you go. I'm an idiot. I've got to do one further step, which was to take our hoop and mask it. My mistake. Bear with me. So undo that. Sorry. Grab our hoop, click this mask layer here, and find the middle. And just create a quick mask around that. We will also feather this mask ever so slightly, just so you don't get any weird pixelation. So if we go to masks, mask 1, mask feather, feather by say 4 pixels. Call this hoop front. We'll duplicate this layer, drag it below the net and everything, above net back, but below the ball. Call it hoop back. Then we will invert that mask. Add becomes subtract. Now that means maybe that feather makes it worse actually. Mask feather 0. Net front mask. No, sorry, hoop front. Mask feather 0. Yeah, that works quite well. Okay, fine. So now we have our ball, which we will make like green. And our hoop back, which will make orange, as well as the hoop front, which will make orange. So now we've got our ball that drops through quite neatly through the net. All right, that's pretty good. Let's take our basketball. It looks a little bit big, so we'll shrink it down. And we'll do our usual of adding the lines to it. So without the basketball layer selected, we go to our stroke. We choose a slightly darker color. We make it 8 because it's always been 8. And this time I'm just going to make it straight on. Cross through the center. Curved sections near the top and middle. Again, it's going to be in motion. And at the end of this, I think what we will do as well is add motion blur onto everything. In fact, let's do that now whilst we remember. Motion blur on. That's in shot 4. Shot 3, we want motion blur on. Shot 2, we want motion blur on. And in shot 1, we want motion blur on. Motion blur on the main comp 2. We'll just add motion blur to all of our characters inside shot 1, character 1. And shot 1 background as well, which is separate because it's a complicated shot. Now, if we go to one of the shots which has motion, there you go. Now that's set really high because of a thing I had before. So we want the shutter angle to be a more standard 180. That is a bit too high for this one, so we'll make it 100. Samples per frame we'll put to 16. And we'll do that for each of these compositions as well. Just because I did it for a different tutorial and it was required that higher thing, I forgot to set it back. So we need to go into the composition settings for each one, set it to be 100, 16, that's fine. That's all the shots. We just need the character, composition, advanced. There you go. So this is the default 180 and 16. So I'm actually going to just, the motion in this one's a little bit better. Actually, the motion blur. So we don't need to do that first one. Let's see what it looks like. Ooh. It's quite hard, actually. Let's set it down to 100. Yeah, that's a bit better. The angle's off. So maybe we could have done this with an effect rather than the built-in motion blur, but I'm not too fussed, if I'm perfectly honest. Nice, that all matches now. Okay, good. So, where were we? We have our basketball. We have our shape layer. We pin it to the basketball. And we make a set mat. Oops. And we set it to be shape layer 1. Excuse me. No, not shape layer 1. Yeah, why is there not? Oh, I'm an idiot. That should be on its own layer. So we'll grab the contents of that shape, cut them, paste them on this shape layer. Don't need that one. We'll set this one's set mat to be b-ball. Much better. Call this one b-ball lines. Pick whip it to b-ball. And that green's kind of hard to see, so we'll make them both purple. Cool. Looks good. All right. So let's grab our basketball. It's going to come in at a slight angle, so -5, maybe -10. We're going to need position, rotation, and scale. And we're going to start our animation. So it's going to come in from up here. And it's going to reach here, where it's going to be 0 degrees rotated. So we're going to add a curve to this path. If we select our pen tool, select the point, we can add a bit of a curve to that. Looks good. Apart from it's a bit slow, so we'll make it maybe 4 frames. Good. And we will set the rotation here to match. Good. There it's going to settle for a second, spin quite a bit, but only move a touch. Because that last one was an adjusted keyframe, we're going to need to come in and just holding Alt, position that so that it doesn't jitter. Here it's going to rotate quite a bit as it kind of gets caught by the net. And then it's just going to drop out of frame really quickly. Like so. And actually speeding up as it gets there, but we'll do that bit in a minute. We'll have it rotate a little bit more as it drops too. Now here we'd want it to be scaling up in like one stretched direction as it falls. Not a lot because of the motion blur, but just a little. Yep. Boom. By the time it catches there again. Boom. Nice. So you can see that once we ease that out and then back in again, the movement's going to look really good. So let's do the position first. We'll ease these so we've got a bit to work with. It's going to come in, landing in. I think it looks like it needs to drop from a bit of a more direct angle. Nice. Lands there. That actually works quite well, but then it's going to need to pick up and not ease out. So it's going to need to just drop. Okay, that looks pretty good actually. The rotation is going to need to ease out to here. So we'll easy ease this one, F9. That shouldn't be eased. And this should be easy eased, yes. But it should get caught. So that'll actually be linear. Boom. Then get caught. Maybe end a bit earlier too. Yeah, that's good. It kind of gets caught by the net, hitches, and then drops. And then that needs to speed up more. Cool. Position-wise, I think that looks good. Scale-wise, rotation-wise, bam. Rotation-wise, it definitely needs to go fast. Oh, God. Go fast to slow there. So it's going to go boom. Yeah, that's better. So it goes boom, gets caught like that. Maybe not quite so much. Yeah, looks good. And then it's going to actually just be quite a slow as it starts to spin out. Okay, that looks good. So that's the ball moving done. Now we're just going to frame by frame this net as it lands in it. And if we see the original, it kind of like jostles to the left, boom, as it lands, and then swings back to the right and then back to the left again. So the only one we'll need to edit for that, I think, is net back. So we'll do that now. We need to animate from the time it hits. So from here, and the only thing we'll be animating is its path. If we wanted to, we could frame by frame this with new layers. I don't think I'll be adding any extra key path points. So what we'll do is we'll just keep it on the same shape layer. Keyframe the path. We need to keyframe the path before as well, so that when we edit this one, it only moves a little bit. And this will be net front, excuse me, not net back. So we'll cut and paste those frames. Now let's move it a little bit. And then the next frame will be the one with the most drastic difference. You can go to keyframe assistant, and you should be able to add handles to one of these frames. But I think you can also do it by alt clicking, is it? Yes, alt clicking. So a single alt click will turn this to a Bezier, which will allow us to curve this corner. And therefore, this one also. Why is that not adjusting it? That's odd. Okay, let's do that a different way then. Let's do it with new layers each time. I think it's because I haven't got the convert points thing on there. So what we'll do is we'll zoom in and we will move our guide layer and scale it up so that it matches what we've drawn, because we drew it a little bit bigger. And the only thing we care about now is the net. So we'll have it match the net like so. And we've got net front, and we will split the layer here, move on a frame and split the layer. Now this frame we can start to adjust. It's going to need a little bit of an adjustment. And then on this next frame, again, move over and split it. What we can do then is really push that out. Again, if we alt click that, we can add the curve in. Move this over here. Alt click to add the curve on to this side too. That looks pretty good. Delete what we got so far. Pretty good. And a new layer. We'll have to come through and drop the opacity of this, but that's no problem. It's definitely easier to draw a new frame each time and adjust the opacity than it is to work with editing the frames. You can just do this, push it into position, hit T, type 80. Or was this 90? It was 90. It's good. Next frame, same thing. Really pushing it to the extreme now. Yeah, definitely easier to draw each time. It's funny because you think that would be the slower option. It's good. Look what we've got so far. Boom. Boom. Nice. Boom. One more then. And this is going to start to push back on itself as the ball starts to push through the net and it overcomes the force that was just applied to it. As this ball starts to drop down, which is what it's doing now, okay, it looks like those timings are going to match up quite well. A few more frames. I think that anticipation is a frame early. So I'm going to delete this frame and just extend this one. Like that. Yeah, definitely. Cool. So at this point, it's pretty much back to straight down. Which is nice. T 90. And then it starts to bend the other way. Not quite so far, obviously, because the force applied to it is less than the force applied to it when the ball landed in the net. So it wouldn't swish this way as far as it swished the other way. Then it would kind of jostle back on itself just a little bit before settling. So we'll just do that now by curving back on itself. like that. And my cat's moaning again, excuse me. And we're back. It's going to start jostling back on itself before just settling. Back into its original position, which we'll just do for a few frames with a little bit of boil, just to give it that handmade feeling. One more, I think. In fact, we can just extend, split, and adjust into our final preferred position, and then bring that out. So if we hide our original sketch again, and look at what we've made. Looks pretty good. Let's hide the palette. Yeah, pretty happy with that. Let's extend that so it goes on to the end of the shots. Go back to our main tab and our project and drag our scene 1 shot 4 composition in. Go to the end of our third shot. Position our 4th composition there with the open square bracket. Press Alt to go to the end, press N to trim it. And see what we've got in total. So it's just going to have to render now with all of the motion blur in, so I'm just going to skip through that for you. Okay, so the motion blur doesn't quite have the intended effect, it seems. I think we'll be disabling that. Kind of makes the arms go a bit janky here. But apart from that, I think that looks pretty good. So let's quickly disable those motion blurs. Okay, that looks a little bit better. We disabled the motion blurs and I've just trimmed the start of it as well. So she only bounces the ball once before cutting to the next shot. I just like the rhythm it has a bit better, especially because it loops as well. I think what I'd probably do is crop it a little bit more here as well, just so it's a nice smoother loop with a bit more rhythm to it. And I think that's pretty much it. So the last step is to add the roughen edges that you saw in the intro, because at the moment it's all very crisp and clean. And doing so will add a nice little bit of roughness to it as well, make it look like it's drawn by a pencil. So what we're going to do is our main composition. What we're going to do is duplicate this, just Control C, Control V. That's going to make main 2, and we'll just call this main inner. Now inside the main comp, we'll delete all of this because main inner is now going to be a single comp that contains all of it. Okay, so we'll duplicate this twice. And on the top layer, we're going to apply a few effects. The first one is going to be find edges. Now what this does is it highlights any edge that it can dictate inside of your composition and just highlights that for you, okay? The next one's going to be Gaussian blur. I'm going to set this to about 5, and that's just going to make these slightly larger and slightly rougher. The next effect is going to be extract. And if we just tweak down the top a little bit, that's going to take away the white and leave us with only these kind of thick sections wherever there is a connecting element within our composition. And then the last one is going to be roughen edges. And the roughen edges we're going to change until it looks a little bit like a pencil. So we might decrease our border size, maybe to 6. Increase our edge sharpness. I think it goes to 10. Yeah. Decrease our scale down to about 20. That's the most important one, as you can see. And increase our complexity up to about 10. Now, as you can see, if we deleted these other 2 here and we just turn the black on, that's going to make some nice, really nice rough edges like so. But that looks terrible as it is. Okay, so what we're going to do is track matte this layer onto our middle layer and then offset the middle layer so it shows some of this through. Now, it sounds silly, but this is exactly what we're going to do. Take our middle layer, track matte, alpha matte main inner, and it's going to look like it's not done anything. And that's because at the moment it's tracking the exact same position. But if we offset this position a little bit, you'll see that some rough edges start to come through in relation to where that top layer is. Okay, so if we zoom in on our eye, you'll notice that this little curvy bump here is the same curvy bump that we're seeing there. Now, a few issues with this technique to create rough edges. As you can see, yes, it creates rough edges, but only on certain angles, like so. Yeah, like the top of the eyebrow. If we were to reposition it the other way, the offset would change. Wait for it. And the rough edges would come in, appearing on this section instead. So it is quick to do, and it works, but it only creates rough edges on a certain section. For this one, I think that's fine. I usually go 4 pixels off, maybe 6 pixels off. And as you can see, as you animate, that looks quite nice on some of these shots. But you can see also sometimes it messes that up a little bit. So that is one option for creating very quick rough edges. A second option, if I just go inside one of these main inners, which is still smooth, is you can apply the roughen edges directly to each layer, which is what we're going to do for this preview, just so it looks good. I'm going to go inside one of these layers. Let's take her arm as an example. You can immediately see why this will become cumbersome. You apply roughen edges to this layer, achieve the effect you want. So I think it was 6, 10, scale 20, complexity 10. And you apply that to a single layer. It looks much better because it applies to every angle. You can then copy and paste this onto every other layer. Adjusting this after the fact will be very, very annoying. So I don't recommend this method if you're intending any changes to your drawings. You can tie the values of this to a null object that has the same roughen edges applied. Then you only have to adjust that one roughen edges, but they'll only work per composition as well. So that is why I'd recommend you use my original method, even though some of the curves aren't particularly represented there. If you can figure out a way to resolve that, please do let me know. Otherwise, you can do it this way or the first way. I'm going to stick with the first way because, as you can see, that is a crazy amount of work for a character this complex. So instead, we're going to be using this roughen edges effect here. Like I said, if you can think of a better way, really do please let me know. Of course, you can tweak this per shot if you wanted to. So if you're happy with the way it looks on this shot, but say not on this previous shot, you can obviously split that, those 3 layers like so, pop them on top, and then you've got a second copy of it, which you can adjust to your liking. Apart from that though, I think that's pretty much there. So thank you very much for watching. We're done. Export this now. Just grab your main composition here, run it through Adobe Media Encoder, whatever you want, and you're good to go. Thanks for sticking with me on this one. I know it was a bit of a meandering topic. I just wanted to experiment and show you guys sort of how I experiment. Is this the most efficient way to animate? Absolutely not. If it was me, I would have done this in Adobe Animate pretty much entirely. But I wanted to show people that you don't necessarily have to have a graphics tablet to animate because you can draw things with a pen tool. And I also wanted to see what cool techniques I could come up with in After Effects to do this sort of thing. So hopefully you've got something out of it. If you've gotten this far, then well done. You know, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you all next time on another episode, hopefully a shorter one, of TipTut.
Remember to subscribe for more tips, tricks, and tutorials. Thanks for watching.